appears not to be any public comments. Let's move on to the next. I'm actually going to skip the next one because I want to give you some administrative updates. The first is that our recording secretary resigned. She has family issues and conflicts. So we're back to the drawing board on that front. I'm working with HR to get some nominees, and we're also, and with Patrick to try to get creative on how to get a recording clerk to be working with us. But for now, Patrick has nicely volunteered to be our scribe. So for that, thank you. So just a comment, because obviously things look a little different around the room tonight. Tonight we're going to be focusing on the subcommittee reports, and as such, and make sure we have time for questions and answers. Because the Collins Center has a certain number of contracted meetings with us, what, 15? We decided that rather than use one of those 15s when they're actually not going to be doing any presenting tonight, that we would have them sit out, we talk to them about it. We want them to make sure that they are familiar with what we talk about here tonight. So they'll get up to speed after this meeting. We're going to meet with them, and then we'll share with them whatever it is for you to share, so that they'll stay up to speed with what we're doing. And then in the next meeting, which is September 10th, I believe, they will be coming and we'll continue our discussion on the legislative branch. Okay. No, the 10th is my meeting. Yeah, that sounds like you're seeing exactly. So that's what's going on. Are any questions about that? Okay, seem like a reasonable approach to you guys. Following the last meeting we had, we got some feedback from people that there seems to be, some concerns about the fact that we have some items that get brought up, but they feel like they're floating. We're not really closing on them. And I think that Jess and I talked about it. We feel the same level of frustration. We want to make sure we don't lose anything, because there's a lot of meat to these discussions, especially that last meeting we had with those probing questions that the Collins Center asked, and we don't want to lose any of that. And so to that end, we developed a spreadsheet to track that, and I want to kind of share that with you. I'm going to do it online now, but I'll send it out to people, because what I'd like to do is to get your input on, have we gotten anything, et cetera, because this way we can keep track of things. And am I going to be able to drive here? Or so this is an example, and maybe Patrick, if we can make that a little bit larger, of some things that have come out based on the discussion. As you can see, we have kind of what section we're talking about, the date we identified the issue, what it is, and the action steps that we talked about, and then who's going to be responsible for following up on that, so we can keep track of that. Timing, if there's a decision that's made by us, what the decision is, we're going to document that, and then a catch-all column for comments. So as you can see here, there are some issues as we teed up the things from the legislative discussion about the number of town meetings, about the size of town meeting, developing a citizens guide to town meeting, and as well as updating the town meeting handbook, which was woefully out of date, as we found. There were things there that people didn't even know were there, like groups committee supposedly selecting the committee members for various and sundry groups. So we need to kind of figure out what's going on there. And then kind of and as we keep going down, I guess that was it. And then the general charter, that Collins Center was going to give us a copy of what that is. Oh, this is the parking lot. Sorry, we're in the parking lot list of things to do. As opposed to there are two tabs, as you can see on the bottom. So that's okay. You can go back to the parking lot. Finish that up. So these are things that we put on our list of things for the parking lot. And so we're going to want to come back. And so there's a tracking mechanism for that. So we're gonna make sure that every time we come out of the meeting, we have captured those things before we get through a meeting. I want to make sure if we have discussed those things that we document what the decisions are, et cetera, so we can kind of close things out of there. The other one, which is the first tab, goes through, again, might need to make it a little bit bigger so we can see it. This is a little bit more complicated because as you can see on here, we are documenting, kind of what the governmental area is, what the function is, because there are different things we're going to be talking about in the legislative, like we're going to talk about different town meeting as well as other things. What the topic was, what the current location is, so that, if it's a bylaw, is it a special act? And putting the link in there so that we can actually go and read what it says, and get specific on that. If we're gonna move it where it's gonna be, that might be, go with the charter, it might be stay a bylaw. It might be move it to a special act, whatever it is we decide, whatever changes, who's gonna be responsible, who needs to approve it, when will it be done, and then again, to catch all our comments. So we can pick up all of those discussion items that we have not focused on. And if you go through this, it goes through down, we go down a little bit. Town meeting appointment, who town moderator, the whole appointment of committees, how that's going to work, timeline for zoning articles, not so fast. That's something that we have actually made progress on. We got the listing of that from the select board's office. So we now have that to Collins Center. So they're going to build it into the next presentation that we go through. Now we can go down another one. And then the whole issue about inviting people in to talk to the group, like how's that going to happen? When is it appropriate to do it? How are we going to do that? And that's something that we're going to lean on the Collins Center to give us guidance on when that's going to happen. And so we've also provided this to the Collins Center so that they know what we're looking for them to come back to us with. So there's no confusion about, well, gee, I thought so-and-so was going to do this versus I thought so-and-so was going to do it. So we can kind of close that up. Again, I think we have captured a lot of this, but what I'd like to do is after this meeting, send it out to the committee. And if there are any things that we don't list on there, I'd like you to send it back. Do not do a reply all. Just send it back to me and I'll update the spreadsheet. And then we'll share it with the Collins Center so that we can make sure that we keep moving on. And hopefully things don't fall through the cracks, because I think we, again, Collins Center, when we start going through this, they said it'll all make sense, and of course everything will be picked up. I'm a trust but verify kind of person, so I think if we track it, then we can make sure nothing falls through the cracks. So that's kind of just a little bit of an update. Anything that can jump out, Nikki?
Just thinking about duplicate issues on each of these two tabs. Should we be careful to only list one thing? Yeah, each thing on one of the tabs.
Yeah. That's a good comment.
I have a question. This will probably be relevant later. Is this something that we would be comfortable sharing with the public?
Well, we already are.
I guess we are, right?
No, I thought about it. Like, and there's some other things that we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm like, oh, do we really want to share this with the public? And I thought, well, kind of are. We're
Right.
public meetings, so everything we do is totally transparent.
That's great.
So, anyhow, Jess, any comments?
No, the other thing I'll add too is, we also receive feedback that'll be helpful for folks that also have an expectation of the next meeting, like what we'll discuss the next meeting, what we might decide on sooner than obviously when the agenda is posted. So the other thing I'll be helping with in each meeting is not only making sure we're capturing, okay, what are some of the follow-ups, parking lot items, et cetera, but also at the end of the meeting, either give insight into, okay, here's what we're discussing next meeting, and or restating, okay, here are the open items that next meeting you need to come with for a thought or a decision, because we're also going to start to get into the point where as a group, we need to start to make some decisions. And I think folks are kind of starting to wonder, when do we need to make these decisions? Like, when do I want to inform myself, gather whatever information I want to gather, ask all the questions I want to ask before I feel like I have to make a decision. So, also hoping to help with that return.
I have a little bit of a broader question, but I think that ties in perfectly, which is, at least to me, the big process, I think is pretty clear, like the broad
Yeah.
stroke. But the smaller process, like, okay, we're doing all this onboarding, we're learning, we're definitely identifying a lot of issues. Sounds like one of the next things is they'll present some example language so we can sort of start with something. What do that question of like, do you discuss these topics or the things you see or like that? I'm curious about that smaller process.
Yeah, and adding on, like, is there just like that big brainstorming session that we all sit together and we like, like a rap session and like, see what everybody thinks about this thing. Okay, we're going to talk right now about the size of the body. All right, let's all have a conversation, come to a consensus about that, or not a consensus necessarily, but, and then we're going to talk about the frequency of meetings. Let's all come to an agreement about that and sort of going through those step by step. I think right now it feels amorphous.
I totally agree with you. And I think, I feel like I'm trying to wrap smoke a little bit on this stuff. And
But you're doing a good job of
Yeah.
like, putting things into concrete
so
form.
we're going to do that. And I think, Jess and I have been having conversations with Collins Center. We know how it's like a major trust test here. They keep saying you'll know when we go through the next part that that's what you're doing. But so I feel like, and I want to encourage everybody here, if it starts feeling little airy-fairy things, like out there, we need to kind of bring it back down. So if you start feeling that way, let's continue the dialogue during the meetings. Like I'm not comfortable that we're really locking this down. Let's kind of dig in more, we're going to try to do that as we go along, but yeah, I'll look to you all to do the same thing, just to keep everybody. So, because we want to make sure that when we do this, it stays, we stay focused and that we have meaningful discussions, we make decisions, we move on. But if we're somehow missing a step, we need to make sure we.
Yeah. And like Betsy said, continue to like pair these questions, concerns, because that's what then brings us to these things, which hopefully feel a little bit more tangible. Because otherwise we're like, are we the only ones that are feeling frustrated or confused on when we're going to make decisions? So yes, certainly keep bringing those. But I think in our conversation with Collins Center, obviously as a result of not only this meeting, but also what we're hearing when we review these language, it feels like, okay, let's try out building that pause where we have the discussion. Because there are going to be some things that we're all like, I mean, this is easy peasy, we can make a decision now. And then there'll be other things that we're like, we kind of want to get some input. We want to talk to certain people. And so I think it's also going to be that balance of like, this is a no-brainer, check done, versus we all feel like we need more information.
I could be totally wrong, but I interpreted what I was seeing as Collins Center was first telling us, this is the state of things now. This comes from this comes from this is this. And then I assume that one of the next steps would probably be, okay, we made chapter 1 and we just put things what they are,
Yeah.
discuss. And then that's when I imagine we would.
I think that's absolutely correct. And so in terms of things that this committee should be doing is we know based on the presentation that happened where certain things are located and we know what certain things are said. So I think that to review the presentation that they had, which everybody should have access to review the presentation they had and because unfortunately we don't have the minutes for that meeting given the fact that we lost our recording part. But hopefully, we'll get those minutes done, but hopefully people can take a look at what they presented and kind of your thoughts on that presentation for discussion for the next one. And as Jess said, we're going to try to get we'll ask them to make sure that they get information out to the committee beforehand, so everybody has a chance to really look at it and do their homework before we come in and have a discussion. Any other comments? Great, thank you. So moving right along, now we're going to jump to the next thing, and Patrick has the slides for this. And just go through, we can get some slides. And people online cannot see anything, please let me know. I am driving right now. Okay. There we go. Okay, so as you know, we established subcommittees, and just a flash out of the past to remind you what we've told the subcommittees that they were supposed to do is that there are two of them. The first one was the external communications subcommittee, and this is what we asked them to do, support our goal of making it transparent and to discuss a whole bunch of things and what would, different options that there would be. The second was stakeholder input so that we could get some insights into people who actually work in town government in some capacity and to look at different options as to how we want to move forward to get the input from people on, employees, members of boards and committees, et cetera. And what we were supposed to do is to develop a strategy, tactics, timeframes, deliverables, and if any resources are needed, what those might be, and report back to the committee at the meeting tonight. So here we are, it is now tonight. So we're going to start with the first subcommittee report, which is the stakeholder input subcommittee, and I'm going to be speaking for that, and our committee members, Corey, here, hello, Jack, and we've been, getting together to kick this thing around and come up with a strategy, and so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So just to review this, charge the subcommittee was to develop a strategy, tactic, timeframes, et cetera, as I mentioned. And the objective of this is to get insights from a representative group who actually work and are involved in town government, so that we can get a kind of an educated perspective on what's working and what's not, and their perspectives on what could happen to actually improve things. And the strategy that we're going to propose is that we actually conduct confidential one-on-one interviews with a representative sample of employees, committee members, boards, et cetera, to do that. And so to that end, the process that we're proposing is we're going to start with this is probably, I just want to say this because I don't want people to get confused and think that this is the only thing and this is going at community input. This is not. This is the first of input that we'll get from outside of this committee, but it is solely focused in on employees or people who are working in the government program. So there will be external surveys, et cetera, later, but this is kind of just this one. So what we did is we took a look at what the best practice was for surveying and interviews. And we took a look at some interview strategies from other towns. Andover, who went through a similar process, we know Natick as well. And so then we went through and said, okay, so how many and who will do we need to conduct the interviews? We want to make sure that we communicate to the boards and departments that the committee is going to be doing these interviews, because we don't want to surprise anybody. When they get phone calls saying we'd like to take an hour of your time and get your impression on these things. So we'll have to work with the town on that after. And then we're going to select a representative group from the town department boards and committees. And we want to make sure that they're kind of spread out. We want people who have both elected and appointed. We want, members of the department as well as the heads of departments and boards. People who've been around for a long time, people who've been around actually not for such a long time, get some different perspectives. And then also make touch base with people who are recently left, retired, because there's some wisdom there. We want to make sure you don't lose that in the process of this exercise. We want to make sure that the participation is anonymous to everybody except for the interviewers. So we're not going to be sharing lists of who we're interviewing with folks. We're going to use a script so that the interviews can be pretty much the same for each one. And it's going to be a tightly managed script. We're going to actually do some file interviews just to see if the script works, how, whether the timing is working, there are too many questions, not enough, etc. And while the interviews are taking place, the interviewer is going to be taking notes. We're not going to be taping it because if you've already told people it's confidential, it's state. So we want to make sure that it's clear that it's not. And then in terms of the results, we're going to identify them we're going to write it up. We're going to organize it by question. There are different themes in the question first, and we'll go through that, like communications is theme. So we'll organize the output by the general themes of the questions that we're asking. And in the process of doing the analysis, we're going to look for themes. What do we hear, for example, on communications? Is there a common theme throughout the town of things that are working and not working? And so we can bring that all back to this, in a final report to this body. And then we, as a body, can use those as we go and are making kind of the decisions we're making about countdown. So it may be that we hear things that said, gee, I know we already talked about that because we're kind of doing this all concurrently. So we may have to say, I know we talked about that, but let's come back, given what we now know, are these decisions look any different than what we have already made? Yes, no, maybe, and kind of have that. So we're going to get kind of an initial pass at the groups, and this is not large and order, but just to give you a sense of where the committee was thinking. And this is basically 19 interviews that we've identified here with different different parts of the town. And with, kind of a stab at how many and whatever, how that's going to work. So we want to make sure that we have a representation of all of the different committees or the different parts of the town as we look at that grouping. And again, as I mentioned, the specific individuals are going to be determined by the committee. So we're not going to discuss that. We're just going to say, these are the kind of departments that we'll make a decision on. And then in terms of scripting, this is an eye chart. I don't expect anybody to read this, but basically it gives you an idea that we'll give a little background. Our first paragraph is a little background about the committee, what we're trying to do, and why we are conducting the interviews. We also want to confirm that it's confidential, and we want to make help people that we really want them to be as candid as they can. And then talking about the fact of how we're going to aggregate the findings so that what they say is not going to be, well, the planning board said, and the select board said, and the library said. It's not going to be organized that way. It's going to be by the topic areas. So here, I'm going to run through some examples of some of the questions that we're talking about. And again, as I said, whoever's doing the interviewing, you can follow a very specific script on how these will be asked. So the first is about the purpose of the department or board or whoever they represent, talking about, how long they've been there, kind of start off with a softball question and then get into some of the meat. And then about communication, how it's working within both their group as well as within the town hierarchy and community at large, and things to do to improve it. And then moving to more general questions about governance. So town governance in terms of what's working, what's not, their perspective on transparency, accessibility, effectiveness, and then about town meeting and responsiveness to that, and any specific, if somebody's familiar with the bylaws, if there are any specific things that should be looked at. And then the last is in terms of the future, in terms of what's emerging in terms of patterns or technologies. What, if there are barriers for the effectiveness of their group, what might they be? And then trying to force a little bit if there's if there were one single thing, if you could do nothing else kind of thing, that would make your own government better. It's a very general question, but maybe forcing something, maybe prompt something like that. So what we're proposing in terms of the time frame for this, you can see here, we'd like to, just because we're operating, kind of at the same time that we're going to be going through these things and making decisions, we'd like to start as soon as possible with this. So we put together a tentative time frame and try to be somewhat realistic with allowing time to get meetings scheduled, to get things written up, et cetera, and to get back to this committee. So we think probably, walking through all this, we'd be back here with themes identified for this committee's consideration at the end of October. It is kind of tight, but we think it's important that we move this forward again, because the kind of information we may be getting out of this are things that we're going to want to know about in the course of doing the work that we need to do as a committee. So the last, well, that's
Maybe say 11/1.
yes, sorry. We're going to present it the 1st of November. Yes, that should say 1/1.
Oh, 1st November, no. 11/11 is the first
November meeting.
in November.
November, yeah. So we're going to have the report done, but then we're going to report it at the meeting. So we have the report done, we can play around with it a little bit and then come into the November meeting.
11/11 is a holiday, we sure we can have it.
Well, we'll talk about that later. So what we need is, I think we need one more interviewer. And so we're going to be looking to what?
We have a wonderful overview, to be employees, et cetera. Are we going to be attending any meetings to see how they're done? What? Will we be, the committee or whatever, be attending any meetings of some of the boards?
The interviews,
The interviews you're talking about, or
The open, the public meetings, right?
Right, yeah.
that's something that all of us should feel free to do. That's not part of this project. This project is really focused on stakeholder input. So again, what we need is, I think we need one more person to interview. And so if, send me an email, is that something that you would like to participate in, please? Just to me, obviously, for the reals. But if we could get one more interviewer, that would be great. And then then I think this committee needs, obviously, Patrick's support and help in sending out the communication to the employees and committees about the fact we're actually going to be doing this. So that's kind of what we have together, and I think we would like to hear something about it.
Question, comment, and another question, I think. I didn't know to BYFS on your list. I'm wondering if we're looking at the family services. I'm wondering if that be helpful to have represented. To just the banners.
An appointed board, what are
They're employees at the time. There's a BYFS board, I think. Yes, there's a BYFS board, but they must be appointed by the. They're appointed by by the select board.
But it's like Board of Moderator.
This chart says town administrator.
yeah, they're appointed.
So anyway, I don't know if that department is one that you want to look at. Another comment, I have a colleague who does exactly this kind of work stakeholder, but work in a different location. And I don't know if you already have a plan for tagging comments or tagging feedback, but if you would love me to connect you with them for that information. They just did a huge project. They hand tagged over 11,000 comments from a survey that they gave. So they yeah. What was the last thing that I was going to say? Oh, I noticed one of the questions, this is just me being pedantic, I think, but one of the questions was, how does communication work? And I'm wondering about the wording of that question. Did we mean, how does it work as in like logistically, or do we mean how well is communication working? Because the way we ask that question could influence the way somebody answers, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all.
Just thinking, turning it back and control the question, you control the answer. So we're trying to be very careful with questions that we don't telegraph like answer.
Right. And what I'm just concerned if you're like, how does communication work? And they're like, well, this is the way it goes, and this is the way it goes, and this is who does what. And really the intention of the question is trying to get at the quality of communication or the effectiveness.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
yeah, I think also there may be some gets at the technical aspect.
Yeah.
Too, so it is to that point. I think it is wide open because for some people, given the nature of their job, they may be talking about the quality, and other people they may say, email, nobody reads their email anymore, and I can't, it's very ineffective because email just doesn't work, right? So it could be actually either of those.
As long as that's okay with you and you're anticipating the variety of responses.
They'll hopefully respond to what is important for them.
Yes.
So I think that's something we want to.
Yeah, I leave the questions to you to figure out. I'm not looking that deeply, but certainly it occurs to me, given that ultimately it's relatively, I don't know the number of employees in the town off the top of my head, but it's going to be a relatively small sample size, given the breadth of, for example, we've heard about the legislative side, and there's all kinds of aspects of how we might approach decisions for that. A risk that exists is when you're talking to people, they might be talking parochially about their very specific job and their very specific boss or the very specific things they deal with. And a challenge will be to extrapolate enough information out that would be not, that's a department head and how they run it. And that's a smaller decision that isn't part of a charter. Whereas other things like not enough town meetings or something, that's the challenge. I don't know how to phrase that well, but I see that as a challenge. Of trying to extract like big ideas from what could be small frustrations or whatever.
Yeah, and I this is where I think we kind of trust the kinds of questions that other towns use because they went through a lot to get in there, and I suspect a lot more consulting cycles than what we're doing. That's another reason to do these test interviews to see kind of. And we'll do on the test interviews, they'll actually be interviews. So, but we're going to do it with different like levels of people and stuff like that. So we get a broad range of like, do these questions work? This one did, this one didn't, kind of that sort of thing for Burlington. But I think that's that's obviously something we need to be careful. But not everybody's going to have the big thing, the big strategic issue that they're going to bring up. There are going to be some smaller ones, but those smaller ones might actually play right into what we're talking about, some of the practical things that we're doing with what we're trying to do. So,
How would you guarantee individual that these are required or to be speaking the advancement of the position? What kind of mean?
well, I think, first of all, the fact that it's confidential and nobody knows but us, like who's being talked to, so none of the bosses know. None of the,
If you're doing it with private,
yes. So we're not going to go to a department head and say, like to talk to Joe. You're not going to do that, and we're going to say to all of the people, we're going to be conducting interviews, we'll be contacting people individually, and they're going to be confidential, so we're not going to release the names of people.
Will they be outside of work hours?
I think that's going to be up to the person that you talk to. I think most of the people that we're talking about don't have to account for their time by, it's not piecework, so I don't think we have to worry about that part of it. Good question. That's something to grapple with. Anything else? So I guess, I don't know if we need a vote on whether this is a proposal that you think we should move forward with. I think that might make some sense to do that.
So motion
I need a motion.
With a motion to approve the proposed strategy from the stakeholder input subcommittee.
Should I recuse myself?
Second.
Need a second. Okay, and let me go through and people can vote. And no, we don't need to vote. Oh, I don't? Okay. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Okay, that results unanimous. Unanimous, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7-0. Thank you. Right. Thank you very much. Okay, so now our next subcommittee.
I want to share. Who shared? Let me make sure that. Share. Yes, this.
All right, if you don't mind switching slides for me, Jeff, so I'll take it from here. All right, so we, the external comms subcommittee, have met a couple of times. We'll just go through sort of our view of the objective of our subcommittee, our strategy, tactics, timeframe, and resources needed, as Betsy asked of us at the beginning. So just really anchoring back on that, the initial charge of the subcommittee. And the members, just in case anybody is forgotten, Russ, Jess, and myself. So I'm not going to read everything on here, but a summary of our objective is really just to inform and educate folks on what we do, who we are, the progress on what we've been working on, and our findings. And we really want to kind of oversee and influence all of kind of like the 5 topics, right? So like what we're communicating, where we communicate it, how often, and who's responsible for it. So
No,
maybe a
that's
second to read it.
Sorry.
Oh, great. Thank you. Is that better?
So again, idea is make sure people know who we are and what we're doing. And internally here with alignment from the rest of the group, figure out what we're communicating, how, where, how often, and who is going to be responsible. So our strategic recommendation is to have a few pillars of communication. So as we were talking about this, it really felt like there were a lot of different threads that we were pulling on, and different types of things that we would need to communicate, and different manners of communicating them. So brand awareness, as in who are we, what are we doing? A work progress campaign, as in what are we working on, and how are we, how's our progress? Then a public outreach campaign, which is kind of in tandem with the stakeholder input subcommittee, where we would be reaching out into a broader representative sample of external stakeholders. And then a buy-in campaign, which would really begin in earnest about next summer, to really start getting people on board, hopefully. I feel like we've done a good job with all of the work that we've done and the recommendations that we're about to put forward. And we talked about this as kind of an information funnel where like the most broad aspect of what you could know is at the top. So like you have a town government would be the top of that funnel. And then moving down towards that funnel, you get more and more specific and more targeted to people who are really likely to engage with us. So we would try to communicate around some of these things, but we will talk more about that. Most of our focus is probably going to be down here on the government review committee and the engage with us parts of that funnel.
But we recognize we can't just start there. We can't be like, hey, come find out about our stuff. Without people being like, why? What is this? Why do I care about this?
Right.
And because realizing that a lot of people don't even understand the concept of it.
Just a question on that one. So there are people obviously with different knowledge bases on this, but so there are people who are tuning in now who know nothing about and need to hear why we have town government. There are people who are tuning in now who say, government review committee, what are you doing and why are you doing it and what's that going to mean for me, right? So you've got, timing wise, you've got people at different levels who want information at the chronological same time.
I think the idea, you'll see when we get to the minutes, is always to say, the brand awareness is constant. There will be people the day before this thing shows up on the ballot. Be like, what are you talking about? So that will be ongoing. The important thing is to try to get people to the places to get the access to the information that they want for whatever level of interest they have.
And we also sort of talked about the fact that like those top 4-ish or 5-ish levels of the funnel really aren't within the purview of our work as the government review committee.
Right.
But, you know, you have somebody on this committee whose job it is, like made it my job to educate the public on these things. And we will ask some questions later on about what's kosher and what's not as far as sharing information from outside agencies. We'll get to that, but we are cognizant that like that top part of the funnel is big work and it needs to be going on, but it's not this committee who should be responsible for it.
It's bigger than us.
It's bigger than us, yeah, exactly. So there's lots and lots of channels that we could be using for public communication. The website we sort of put on the left-hand side because it is the foundation that should be where the sort of single source of truth for all of the information about the government review committee and the work that we're doing. And we have kind of 3 different phases of how we would like that to look. At the baseline, you know, very basic, like, who are we? What is our charge? How do we contact us? What the timeline is, and when we're meeting. The next iteration, so hopefully after that baseline is established, which I think we have a pretty decent baseline already that we've seen. The next iteration, linking to BCAT recordings of these meetings, summarizing content. I have some ideas about that, and I may just talk separately to Patrick afterwards because I have thoughts about that. And then when it's up and running, maybe we have a newsletter that we send out once a month with a summary of what we've been talking about, you know, other kinds of email communications, and also inbound communications. How are we going to get people to us? How are we going to funnel people to the website? How are we going to get people to take that survey? So that is sort of the baseline foundation of communication, but a website is inbounds just by its very nature. You have to be locating yourself, you have to know about the website, you have to be on the website. So every other network, every other kind of communication we're doing, with very few exceptions, will be leading people back to this website because that is going to be the place where people can find the information that they need.
We did, as it relates to that, even talk like, do we need our own like microsite? But then we went back to what we've even discussed as a larger committee, where hopefully we get to a point where the public gets used to our website, all the information is in one place. There's already a problem of so many different things occurring. Granted, we do know that for the high school, they have their own website. Fox Hill, they have their own website. And so, I mean, we really want to make sure we are training the public to understand that whatever the website is, that is your source of truth. So that's why, I mean, we had said at the end of the day that everything needs to feed to the website, no matter what else we're doing.
I also like the idea of if we have a government website, then government stuff should be on the government website as opposed to creating a tangential one. So I like that. I also.
At least speak. I'm probably the most vocal of like, what the hell website? I feel like there's an important part of this that's going to be how to communicate easily. And our website is pretty dense. Like the current town website is very dense. Now it does its job so that like better than most for sure. So, it remains to be seen. I certainly had questions over what flexibility do we have? And these are minor questions to be, we'll detail out. But I guess, a question, or maybe the bigger group saying, if we want to pursue a separate website that is linked and directed from the main town website, or whether we say, nope, we're going to live on the main town website, whatever the consequences, we'll deal with it. That's probably a great question to get resolved, today.
Yeah, today.
But certainly from this point on, the slide referred to the website, and we mean that place that we end up deciding.
Jack, what were you going to say?
So I like the idea of linking to the town, so most people are involved in building the town website, but you can create your own
Right.
website.
And that sort of the tension.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for absolutely, I think the two options on the table are either there's a separate site that is definitely linked from the town. It is endorsed by the town and whatever laws and rules we have to follow, good. Versus it is on the town website and we talk to whoever manages that. You work with them to figure out how to make it fit. I think those are the two options on the table.
Well, everything on the town website you will be in a room anyway.
Yes.
I don't know how flexible the rooms are. For example, I won't get into it, but like,
A separate website is like an ADU outside of the house. It's not even inside the house. Scott, did you have, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, we can, there's a framework within Civic Plus, which is our vendor,
that's what I was
that,
wondering.
that there's, you can have it housed looking like all community websites look like community website looks right now. There's kind of pages from that. So if you look at the police department website, if you look at recreation, they have their own banner. Those are pretty costly to add those on, just from what I remember doing this in another community. But I mean, there's a whole lot that's not being utilized on the current website that can be. So, there's opportunities for the community to receive input. There's forms. There's a bunch of different modules that I can spend time with the subcommittee and the next meeting. Not but
Meeting tomorrow.
yeah. Well, I'm in the interviewing communications officer tomorrow, relevant to this discussion. So what I'm saying is, whatever the will of the committee is, will support community reports. But there's a bunch of resources that I think are sort of untapped in the term.
Okay, that's fine.
So you're our guy, we'll find a separate time.
Civic Plus is the people who read it. Program.
Yeah, they're like consider them almost like the website developer. And then we have a bunch of abilities to customize and use different things with that.
Different module.
Not with Civic Plus, we buy a whole package. It's just whether or not we're using them or not.
As a former website engineer, this makes sense to me. So I think I get it now. Cool. We should go on and come back to reach a concrete decision about live in Burlington.org or link off of it to a new place.
It's something really off it that we need money.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And that is on a separate slide later on in the question slide too. So don't feel like we're just going to gloss over it. Yeah. We'll come back to that. That's questions will answer. Are we ready to move on to other communication channels? Feeling good? Okay. So there are other communication channels. You could use any number of social media platforms. The question really is like, we already do have our own page on Facebook, but where would we post it? We post it on Instagram. Would we create our own Burlington Government Review Subcommittee or Burlington Government Review Committee? account, profile, whatever, I don't know, whatever. Would be the same thing with YouTube. If we wanted to create some small informational videos, where would that go? I don't think the town of Burlington has accounts just on its own in any of those places. So those are just kind of questions for further consideration. Next door, same thing. We would love to do some short, quick videos, some really, quick vertical videos with text overlay that just say, Burlington Government Review Subcommittee, here it is, it's here. Anytime we're talking about it, we don't have to recreate the wheel. We can just link that one particular video and send it to whoever's asking, or post it with whatever information we're getting. Not sure what we are. Here's a video that will explain the whole thing to you. Very much like the building subcommittee or the building committees are doing with their phasing videos. So those are all sort of social media, outbound focused. Then there are flyers and postcards. So things, yes.
It's from two different places, and there is a group of people having conversation on one. People get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And but some people are just here and some people
Right.
are here and they're not always intermingling. And that's just kind of what
The
happened.
problem is, because we are trying to attract such a wide variety of people, we kind of have to meet them where they're at. And unfortunately, when it comes to social media, people are all over the place.
Right. I think the important part would be to entice those people with their comments and their thoughts to the input that the other committee.
I'm not concerned with one group of people, one train of thought, one group of people different. Then when you try to bring them together, they say, no, that's not what we discussed.
But nobody's discussing anything legally, right? This is an informational campaign.
That's what they discussed
Well,
on Facebook.
fine, but I don't care. I'm not looking underneath the post.
Kind of, and I'm, you probably all over this one, but to the extent that people have questions or, they're throwing things, stuff out there, comments, it feels to me like there needs to be some sort of moderation,
Yes.
moderator,
Yes,
that you're gonna get into that, right?
we haven't, but yes, I think that's, I can't take notes right now.
Right, but it can't be uncurated, I guess is what I'm saying, because if people are gonna, let's say, go to Facebook and to Jack's point, there are gonna be all kinds of like comments, blah, 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 and there are probably some questions in there that need to get answered, then, do they get steered to a common site for all questions linked in here?
We need like an inbox, we need like an email inbox,
Yeah.
and it's a blanket response of, like, you can email this to get the info.
And at the end of every post caption, it's gonna say,
Yeah.
any questions? Go to this website.
Yeah.
And or email this, address.
Maybe to be clarifying, I don't think any of us were thinking about post a Facebook message, expect a discussion to happen amongst the town, Facebook. I think the intention was post to Facebook and the Facebook points you to the place where you're collecting input
Yes.
or the
So it's
place
gonna
where,
have to be pretty tight with
Right.
a link.
although I will also note, there's three kinds of, communication. One is outbound, us outbound to them. One is them inbound to us. But there is another one that you're raising, which is them across each other. And maybe where neither committee has considered this, is there a location, a place, a platform where the town can communicate amongst themselves?
But do we want them to? That's a very good question.
I will also state, any platform that we're on, I would vote, we disable comments. I do not want to moderate, because that is a losing battle. Been there, it's not cool.
We definitely can disable comments on Facebook.
Yeah, I don't know what our capabilities are, but.
Yeah.
I really,
But it's
been on
not-
social media
yeah.
for so long, not really sure there's gonna be a whole lot of
Yeah.
robust commentary on those platforms, but maybe I'm being naive.
Even if we think
Somebody
it's
asking a question, somebody that
Right.
without knowledge gives their answer.
Well, that's what,
Suddenly becomes the truth.
that's the content itself is not gonna be like, here's the breakdown of last meeting. It's gonna be, hey, we had a meeting, this is the topic, go here to get the information.
Or, yeah, and it's also not gonna be like, what do you think?
Yeah.
Let's say it also, anytime we have any platform where there is user generated input, there will be people who throw up awful things.
That's right.
That is the fact. So
Or just ignorant things, or just things.
whatever it is, you just have to assume that there will be bad actors. And so that's the thing we should consider when we're doing anything to say, you brought up moderation. I don't want to be in the job of moderating. I don't want any moderating. I'd rather we either have an open platform where someone else is moderating, or we don't collect input in a communication fashion like that. We just do, we're outbound and we're inbound, and that's it. But these are all things that are definitely worth making sure we consider very carefully.
That's sort of how.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
agreed.
yeah, we'll talk about it tomorrow when we.
I just asked a question.
No, I think it's a valid point.
Really important.
It's a valid point. Like, I am not in the business of moderation. That is why I have not created an exposure for roads bus, because I could, but I know somebody who does that, and they have 10,000 people on their page, and that's their job, is moderating comments, and that is not, I don't know.
I'm in the business of moderating, so I also have no problem writing up. As a brand marketing person, it is a part of my job. I have no problem writing up rules and guidelines for that.
So putting a pin in the social media conversation for now. Flyers and postcards, very outbound way with no two-way communication to get information out to folks. They come with a cost to get to every town. It's about, at least for me, like $4,500 to get a postcard out to every town. Maybe the town has a different rate somehow, I'm not sure. But that's printing and mailing, that's where I've been. So you will see later a question about a budget for such things, which may or may not come to pass. Showing up at public events, we have Trucktober, we have the Civic Expo, which I definitely hope you folks will, at least one or two people from this committee will sit at a table at the Civic Expo. We've got the town election, we've got Celebrate Burlington, all of those things. The beer gardens, yeah. It may be a little bit.
Yeah, we're not gonna have
To organize, but next year's beer
next year.
garden. Next year's beer garden. And next year's Celebrate Burlington.
I
Celebrate.
think we'll be down for next year.
That's okay, because we're still gonna be.
Yeah, we're still gonna
trying to get people interested and voting, because we're gonna be going to town meetings.
It's also probably never too early to at least say we exist, and we are on our website now, so we can always just say, tune in, go check it out, what was our meetings?
Yeah. That the list of people that like vendors at the beer gardens is finalized as far as the number for next year.
Gotcha.
We also talked about having like flyers up, Council on Aging, at the library, at the rec center, an ad perhaps in the rec brochure, or in the senior spotlight, or in the senior spotlight, if there's room. And then we also talked about the highway sign. Russ loves the highway
Russ
sign.
loves that.
Talk about the highway sign.
So I have been living here a long time. I am ignorant, or was ignorant, of town government largely, but I knew what was happening because of that highway sign. You driving out of town, it's telling you things. Oh, that thing, okay, cool, that thing's happening. So I love the highway sign. I hope we get a permanent sign that tells things to the town. I think it's a great way to get eyeballs and let people know what's going on. Obviously, it's gotta be short, people are driving by, but
Yeah.
I'm a fan, so, you know, anytime we can use it.
What would be the message?
I don't know. What would be the best?
The government's changing, or I don't know, I would think of a clever message, very
Well,
short. And
the-
link the website, you know, write the website.
The idea is to use it for announcing when we have public input sessions.
Oh, okay. So there'd be specific actions that people do,
Yeah, I mean, they obviously can't.
like
put-
vote today, kind of.
Right.
Yeah, or like, we need your opinion on your town government.
Like if we send out a survey,
Yes.
fill out your survey.
Right.
kind of thing.
Or if we're having a physical
Yeah.
public
Come to
input
the
session.
public forum.
In my mind, it's a useful, outbound, but very narrow band and limited bandwidth thing that I don't even know if we're allowed to use. So,
Well, we're getting a new one.
I mean,
We're getting a real one.
TV didn't know that.
It's supposed to be this fall.
Is that happening? Stop.
Looking forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's moving forward.
Any PT, any
No, but there was discussion about it last week around my office, so it's on track. Not fall yet.
But school's starting next week, so.
Yeah.
Parent Square is another place that we could potentially source outbound communication for folks. And then inserts into tax and water bills. Those are things that happen sometimes that people look at. I know last year on, can't remember which bill it was, but when I opened it, it must have been the water bill. Because I don't know, tax bill.
condo conference.
Oh, that's that's good. That's a super good point. But it said like Civic Expo this date. So like we did have some latitude to put information on that for people who see it. I don't know how many people are looking at the bills, the water bills and tax bills or whatever. If you're not getting a tax bill, if you're not getting a water bill, then that's a decent. That's
Or if you're renting, you probably aren't getting a water bill.
right, exactly. So
And the reason why you see highlights up here too is because obviously there's all these channels. We are three humans, there's only so much we can do. And so we asked ourselves, what would be the ones we felt like are at a bare minimum what we would want to do? But we wanted to still give everybody the purview of the list of what we discussed to see if there was, if people felt very strongly about a yes or no on any of these channels. And so that's why you kind of see the highlighted ones, the ones that we feel like as a subcommittee, we should absolutely be engaging.
So if you have flyers and postcards, flyers like you put up on a bulletin board kind of thing. The postcard, to me, is, it's expensive, but if you could put it in a bill, you could have the same postcard information, but not pay for it.
right. But and then if people are not getting the bill, so it's not actually reaching
But you
them
have
door.
you have to pick the right bill, right? You know, if it's somebody who's, you have to pick the right bill. So it has to be somebody who's like progressing here, and maybe it's a excise tax bill. I mean, everybody gets an excise tax bill, whether you're renting or not, if you're a registered.
Paper vehicle, right? If you have a vehicle.
If anything says you're here in Burlington. So I think there's a way that you could identify a bill that comes from the town that everybody gets. But I just think we could save money by not doing a postcard and
And there's a question about legality of what you can put inside those inserts.
Yeah,
Patrick is nodding.
I'm sorry, only certain bills are allowed to be, have inserts. Inserts can say certain things, they can't raise the postage of the bill.
Okay.
So there's a pretty reasonable framework. Certain bills have to be voted by the select board to approve to go in, which I think any bill would need to be. So
But if we had a sheet of paper that was the width of 8.5 by 11, but a third of the height, right? Yeah, so it would just go right inside. Do you think that would be a thing that we could actually execute on?
yeah, from a concept perspective,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. We
Pending approval, pending whatever.
Preparation is sending out each,
Yes,
so it's not done by council.
no, it's done by a bill printer who also, you know.
I was thinking that schedule, it's schedule, bill, routine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it sounds like there's gonna be a budget, and it's a budget, if there's any paper involved.
Yeah.
You're paying the contractor to do it, they're gonna charge you whatever.
Well, and I'd be curious too if what would be cheaper, them printing and inserting that or adding a design to the envelope?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Maybe this is better solved, you know, at some point, we just need a budget. What are our constraints?
Yeah.
Oh, you've got $3,000. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Then we make the best decisions about what's possible.
Great.
That money and try to get to as many channels as possible. And again, prioritizing probably, you know, at some point, we have these different campaigns. We have the, we exist, you should check it out, you should go to the website. We have the, give us your feedback. That's going to be very important when it comes time to actually collect the town's input. And then the last one of, this work has been cooked. Come check it out before you vote. It's going to be another piece. So there's almost those three major pieces, and we're going to want to reach essentially everyone for those 3 points.
Does anyone know what robocalls cost?
So I'm just gonna look at Patrick for everything municipal related.
So like a reverse 911, what they cost?
Yeah.
There's not an incremental cost per call. Now, there are a lot of different opinions on what should be used for
I personally
a robocall.
it's appropriate.
My opinion is that really it should be for safety only.
I agree.
But to answer your question, no incremental costs by a package. Covering the cost.
But it's, it's kind of like set up, you know, whatever it's supposed to do, it's approved and has a figure. It's not.
Not for an individual call. We just.
No, we contract with the company, anybody can sign up for it, and anytime you make a call, you make a call.
will answer their phone.
Well,
It reads messages.
So,
They text me and call me and email
Yeah,
me.
you're missing out.
Can't make a post.
About the, you know,
yes, I think, my opinion is that those kinds of things should be exclusively for emergency stuff. It just loses its impact if you start using it for this kind of stuff.
Anytime I see 60.
No, it's the same, I think it's the same system. Right, there's only one robocall.
I'm not sure. I've seen some senior centers have their own drive, and there's a smaller population. I don't know the answer.
they all come from 16.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. External channels, we got the Buzz, we got the BCAT. Daily Times Chronicle does not list Burlington in their area anymore.
Shows that.
Yeah, so I don't really know if they're an appropriate entity to reach out to. There is Patch. Anybody can post on Patch. I will reserve my comments about Patch. Wicked Local, same deal. You can't, individuals can't post on it, but maybe you can send them a press release. I think so.
Wicked Local, is that a news? does
It
that
used to be the Union. It's the company that bought the Burlington Union, and now they're just regionalized.
Is it a paper?
No, there's no.
This is all online.
This is all online, yeah. Everything's online, yeah. We could with a budget, I'm gonna say that because I do a lot of stuff for free, but we could with a budget advertise in Buzz magazines, which are gonna start going to every home in Burlington next year. So that could be another community. Cool, all right. And so what we will communicate again, we've talked a lot about all of the things that we would communicate as an entity, who we are and what we do, how we got here. A timeline would be really great, highlighting important dates, highlighting important milestones as we come to them will be a good thing to do as well. Continually synthesizing information of where we are. And again, the vision that I have is some kind of quick informational video that may be best delivered on YouTube. I mean, that might just be the way that we do things like that, where it's a 30-second video. We do quick bullets of like, this is who we are. This is why we were formed. This is what we decided or talked about with the legislative body. Here, the summary, just very quick hits. So anyway, so current state of town government and topic that we're talking about, what the recommendations were and the reasoning behind it, and then maybe possibly running lists of discussions, and then forum and community input opportunities when there's a survey, when there's a community forum, we want people to know about that. And then reports to town meeting. So in September, we'll say, Chair Betsy said these things, and here's the trajectory for the future. And it'll just be a quick summary and just like an update, community update.
Try to discuss. Town meeting, will be an update from us.
And then, all right, so resources needed. Yay, budget. We would love whether we get our own sort of external website or whether we continue using the town's website. Just a friendly URL would be great, even if we just call it Gov Review, maybe, or something that is explanatory but brief that people can get to. We really, really want a roadmap, a graphical roadmap from the Collins Center, real bad. We want to know when this work starts, when it's going to end, and what the milestones are along the way, and we want to be able to see it.
Maybe want to, not just a roadmap, but really detailed project.
And templated, like a templated graphic that is easy to read, attractive looking, and you know.
Yeah.
Right,
That we can use it to communicate out.
And we want one for this committee.
Right,
for us.
internally, I want to detail.
That's detailed. The one, for, imagine a website, and on that website, right in the front page, where are we at? And it's your time. Oh, we're at stage 4.
Yeah. And you see
And if,
those from MSBA and
Exactly.
the other building projects all the time. If you go to the website, you'll just see a really nice timeline that's public facing. It's very easy to understand where you are.
There obviously are opportunities for even more detailed breakdowns of things. Maybe tip 1 breaks down to legislative, and here's the dates, and here's the things we're talking about, or whatever. But it also depends on, what do we need to communicate to the public, particularly? If it's just a log of what we did, okay, we're sort of doing that with minutes and videos and things. I think that's more in line for helping someone who doesn't understand what's happening say, where are we at and where are we going?
For the targeted, I think, like they made, just going to the residents, not the businesses.
Right, my vision was residents, yeah. I mean, citizens who are voting, I think, are the people who really need to be the most informed stakeholders. Yeah.
Trainings.
Ideally, the top campaign, hey, everyone, we exist and we're doing things, that should lead back to the site that has everything at every depth. So if we are good at communicating properly within the town's confines, all the people who are business owners in the town, and they should also be aware, we may not target them for voting, but they should know we exist. That's the goal.
I was gonna
They may
say,
be able to dig deeper and say, oh, I have a way to comment or give feedback.
I think the businesses, given the importance, because town meeting affects them, the select board affects them. I mean, the decisions we make about these different bodies affect businesses. So somehow the target our audience has to include them.
Maybe there's a channel that's.
I'd like to ask you guys to consider
Yeah.
how that happens. It can't be just the voters.
Well, I think also for the other subcommittee,
But for,
are we gathering
Right.
that would be part of the survey, I think. It's not this.
Yeah, the other subcommittee at the moment has a narrow focus. There's a bigger focus for future subcommittees.
Absolutely.
That subcommittee and this subcommittee need to do a lot of
So
refinement.
I think there's a subcommittee to be named later.
Yeah.
That we need to have as well, once we get through this.
So another thing, we've already talked about YouTube, but a YouTube channel or access to a YouTube channel would be wonderful so that we can get videos and information up there. Potentially, this is one of those like ask for the stars and maybe you'll get whatever the saying is, or like a graphic designer who could do a little bit of branding for us, like give us some nice colors or, a logo or some kind of way to identify the work that we're doing and sort of make it all cohesive and.
Do we have any volunteers on this committee that kind of talent? Or know somebody who would like to be generous with their time and donate that kind of time?
Yeah,
Okay, I mean, that is great and nice, but we are definitely not going to have resources to do that.
It's a nice-
We can get volunteers to do that, so, Jack, if you could talk to John, and if he's willing to help, and put him in touch with,
No, that's done. Someone to set up and help maintain the website. I think, Patrick, you've been working on the website already. Is that right?
Yeah, we built it out, and it already has a friendly URL.
Yeah, how you've been doing everything?
Oh, this is on.
Oh, it's not. Oh, I didn't know that.
Happy to work with you, learn things, whatever, and get roll my sleeves.
Something about the in story.
Great. And then, so resources needed, one pagers about town government related information. And that is where we say like, we need this, but we are not as a committee going to be creating this, right? So those one pagers would encompass things like, what's the structure of our town government? What does town meeting do? Et cetera, et cetera. And I will say, and this is a question on a future slide, like Burlington Buzz does all of that already. It's all there for consumption, but what is like, they need to be certified in one pagers, but also what is the facility that we have to link to external sources like that. Ideally, communications person that is hired by the town would have some input into things that are owned by the town that represent what the town does and how the town functions. That hasn't happened yet at my college, so. So questions that we have something else to say, Bessie?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what it takes to make that happen. I mean, to link to the external sources, I mean, can we just link to them?
So, yeah,
but the question is more, can we? Because then is that Burlington saying we endorse that specific source of information that we hold to be true? It's more the like legal compliance
Right.
aspect aspect of,
Yeah, because I know like,
right, not like the how.
even election related information that was just, these are your candidates and here's a brief bio of each, I couldn't post anywhere in. So things that are like for, like created by us as an assist for everybody in town can't be like posted or shared by the government. And so-
Ultimately, this is going to an election. Secretary of State, say, what we can't get, I do.
Yeah, that's different kind of communication, you know, what's on the ballot.
We gotta be careful. We don't run afoul of state election.
Right, and in general, I know, I don't know where and who is responsible for administering the law, so I guess that's a question that I need to have answered. or
Who
we-
can we ask this question to?
The question of whether external resources can be, well, so there's a few areas. There's the legal side of it. There's the administrative side of it, there's the practical side of it too. So, I mean, I'll look into it, but I have some concerns with some of this generally myself. So I can definitely.
And it may be more, based on what it is you're trying to do. So one pager taking, like Buzz did a great job on this, what is the government, who's, what, where, when, you know, kind of like those educational pieces that are there. And can we take a page, have somebody review it to make sure they're comfortable for it to show up on our page, kind of thing. Yeah, you know, where we kind of take bits and pieces from different places.
Yeah.
Well,
like
that's
if-
the question.
If we created something and gave it to Lisa V, for example, to town council and said like, is this okay for posting on the website? Like, I don't know, that's just.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I would envision it, rather than like putting a link to it or suggesting that people subscribe, because I think that's a little,
Yeah.
you know, little can do, but.
Right.
So what's the ask here?
Yeah,
Patrick said he's gonna, we can reconvene with him on
Okay.
how to dig into
I'm
that.
gonna let you guys.
Yeah, because the question is like, the legal compliance concerns, and then the part B is the process for it. Okay, if we don't link to it, use the information and source it, like, is there a process we can follow to get approval?
Dig even further, what if we, if we end up having a town account for YouTube, as an example, which ain't even a thing, can the town make video? Can someone representing the town put a video on YouTube as a representative of the town? Or is that itself, not okay, because that's making a choice about its YouTube, and there was no, I don't know, number of bucks. You get what I'm saying? So there's that.
Yeah.
Can you use anything of the modern internet?
And that might be a finding of the committee, is that process doesn't exist within our town, and that's something we need to fix as a part of the bigger committee.
Nice.
yeah,
Not the company, but the concept.
yeah. And that's where it gets really complicated. And like, I think it's murky and we don't have firm answers right now, but ideally there would be something that is created, at least internally created by the town that said, this is this is that. I think, yeah, that would be great. So other questions that we need to have answered. And we have touched on this a lot because both of our subcommittees have been presenting today, but how are these two groups going to work in tandem? It seems like the work of the other subcommittee is sort of in a silo right now, but it won't always be. So I don't think it's a question to answer today, but I think in future, after those interviews are conducted or it's given, I think maybe that's a good time to reconvene and just say, what's next for you all?
Well, I think here's my vision, and maybe I'm like wrong here. How I envision is that the subcommittees that have been put together, especially like the subcommittee on stakeholder input, is a short-lived subcommittee. This is not an ongoing subcommittee. There is a specific project, there's a beginning, there's an end, and then there's going to be what is the next generation of input we need, which is probably larger, like community input, right? And then there's going to be a new subcommittee that will be formed for that. So the people who signed up for this particular subcommittee may not want to sign up for the next one, or may, that's up to them. But by keeping them this one discrete, and with a beginning and an ending, I think is the way I envision this one. Yours is a little bit different because that's an ongoing kind of frame. But because this is a discrete project, I envision that when we get to the meeting of November 11th, this subcommittee done, and then we decide what the next subcommittee is going to be, so that people are not signing their life away by just signing up on the committee. So unless anybody has any issue with that, that's kind of how I had fun this committee would go.
That's fine, it's a different project, so
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
The other two, the bottom bullet, can we have a separate website? We've talked about, and y'all have talked about, so I'm not gonna go over that. And just the idea of renaming the committee, a little bit more engaging, a little bit more brief.
You mean BGRC?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something nicer for the public.
Shorter.
Like friendlier,
Make Burlington greater.
We are not.
I think that one, we'll move on to the next idea.
if anybody has ideas.
I had some second thoughts about town website or in, from the public board meetings, you can't restrict the content of what people say at a public meeting. Well, Rangers, sure, you've seen it, it's, that came on 5 years ago. So if it is a town website, they have to allow any and all idiots to say what they want.
Well, there's no
vehicle.
public, yeah, there's no public comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can't.
Can I suggest, with respect to the name of the committee, maybe people can individually send in names to one person, and then we can read them at the next meeting.
Yeah, we can also ask ChatGPT.
I was just gonna say, that sounds like a job for ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Sorry, Corey, I'm sorry.
Even GPT are best friends.
Okay, so just
So that'll be an action. Yeah.
let's take an action that anybody who has ideas for names for this committee, send it to Jess.
Yep.
And how you come up with those names is up to you.
Yep.
Whether it's using actual intelligence or artificial is kind of your call.
And to be clear, the objectives for naming of it are to be brief, understandable by as much of the people who immediately look at it as possible, and to try to communicate what it is we're doing.
We're,
Gotta fit on a highway sign.
and we're,
That's actually how it came up, was reference to highway sign.
I think we're ready for the last slide here too.
Oh.
You have it on there? Okay. So next steps, there's a communications plan. You don't have to look at it. Please don't bother. We'll send it to you and you can take a look and just make sure that it makes sense to you. What essentially it is, it's just a communications plan that has all the different dimensions. So brand awareness, work progress, public outreach, and public buy-in. And then what the message is, who's responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. So you might recognize that framework. What channel we're going to use to communicate that, what the details are, what the status is, and then when that information should or did go out. I think that's sort of the timeline. So just take a look at that when it comes in your email. I also use this one afterward. And that's all for there. Next steps, also a website architecture plan. Russ, I'm going to trust you.
Yeah.
Chat with Patrick about that.
Today's outcome, I did a little bit on my own today, but I think it's probably scrapped now that
Okay.
we'll learn things.
Just a little just like a little wireframing of like, what are the pages we would like to see? What information goes on each
You
page?
should, like the website, architecture plan.
Yes.
What is the,
And then really a process, which is something we'll probably talk about tomorrow, I imagine, for figuring out which information will be distributed and when and all of that stuff. So basically the process to feed this website, spreadsheet framework to then get the communication out into the world.
So what is the review process going to be?
That's what we have not
That's
talked
number
about.
3.
Yeah, that's number 3.
that is next to us, is we need to figure out what the process is for, and, because obviously, like, we don't want to make decisions in a vacuum. It would be something like folks on the committee and then TBD on legal, compliance, et cetera.
So you have to list up your names. Yeah. An
Yeah.
approval committee of some sort.
Yeah, the other option is to have like a subcommittee report time at the beginning or at the end of each of our meetings, probably at the beginning. Just to say, here's what we're thinking, feedback from the crowd, and then execute after that.
When we talked about the process for determining information, I certainly was thinking there's almost different phases. There's an initial construction of a website with all kinds of information we're gathering that is not changing because we already know it or we need to gather it and put it in. Then there's another thing, which is kind of more what I was thinking of when I said that process of, as the committee goes on, day to day, week to week, month to month, how do we get information and then feed the machine
That too.
with the new things that
Yes.
are always ongoing? So we just had a discussion about the legislative branch. What is the process we use to collect information from that meeting, distill it? Where does, post it somewhere, make it accessible, whatever. I was thinking of that as well, sort of something to keep that ongoing so that people who are detail oriented and want to know that level have a way to follow that information other than maybe just watch the meeting or read the minutes.
One of the things that occurs to me as, as Collins Center's been telling us that this is going to be kind of an iterative process. So we may make some decisions on the legislative things that we're going to come back to and revisit later. So we're going to have to, whatever you do, we need to make sure that it doesn't, things don't look like final decisions before they're done. It's kind of fluid-ish. It's like that.
You mentioned establishing a budget, Nikki. Is there a cost factor associated with Collins Center helping us?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm not sure what the number is, but we have, it's probably more than that. But we have 15 meetings that have been, we already know, right? I've already talked to them about, it's a little bit off topic, I did talk to them about, they did a study for Andover, and where they did a community survey using the UMass Policy Institute at Lowell, which was really quite a neat survey. And so I've asked them to go back and get us estimate for having UMass do the same thing for us. They've already done it once. It's the same project. And I would think they're easy to replicate it. So they're going to come back with a proposal with another budget number associated with that. So, I think what we need to do is operate reasonably within the budget that has been established, which for us, we're not dealing with numbers, we're just dealing with time associated. So we have 15 meetings, and then what I told them is if we're going to go out of scope, they need to tell us in advance, and then we need to make a decision as to whether we want to ask for more money, which Nick and I have already talked about, and the select board knows, or who knows, that we may have to come back and ask for some more, but we're going to try not to do that unless there's a discrete project like the community survey, for example. Because I think that's bigger than this committee can do, just as the number of us that are sitting in this room.
Well, and there's expertise out there. There's no reason for recreation.
Exactly. And so if we can make that work.
So, is the answer, we're not going to get a budget for mailings?
No, I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is, I'd like to see you guys put together a kind of just a ballpark figure what you're talking about, just so we know, it's bigger than the bread box.
This is sort of like an entire communications budget.
No, I mean, let's see, just for this discrete item. What you guys are proposing, I think we need, in order to do what it is you're proposing, what it is you're looking for in terms of money, a range. Because I think we have to go to the select board with some idea of what we're talking about. And we need to keep it real. So, for example, looking for volunteers to do the design on the thing, to me, is the most prudent approach for that. I'm sure there are other opportunities where we can look for people to put in their kind of sweat or equity, whatever, into this project. So where we can do that, I'd like to do that.
If you're looking for money, also, students, any grants available.
I think we have time.
Yeah.
Grants it took 10 months for a grant that I applied for, and then by the time I got the grant, so I got the, when it was done. So it's, you know, so
So obviously one of the decisions that we wanted to make tonight was on the website. It sounds like if we wanted to do anything external, that's gonna cost money.
So, in this presentation, we talked about 4 marketing campaigns. One was ongoing, you remember them all. Yeah. We also mentioned many channels. Most of those channels are free to inexpensive, but unknown whether they're even usable. So I guess that's on us to figure out, can we use them and who do we talk to? Assuming we have the blessing of the committee to proceed on that. I guess that's the decision. The decision is, does the committee believe that the campaigns as outlined make sense? Does the committee believe that the channels as highlighted, the highlighted ones, are things we should learn more about? We may succeed or fail in being able to utilize them, but at least we could do the digging to say, can we use it? What's the legality? What's the cost? Et cetera. If the committee is happy in that direction, that at least is something for us to proceed forward with. And then the last one, obviously, being the website.
So in terms of channels, you're really just talking about the website.
No, website, social,
See all those.
Facebook and Instagram.
Right.
Yeah, flyers, postcards, which obviously we would owe a budget because even printing them. Public events. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Are there channels we know we can use right now?
The government website, townofburlington.org. The
Facebook,
only one I know for sure.
Facebook.
Yeah, but we don't know that, because
Right.
we don't,
Has it.
what would we post it under?
Well, so we do have a Facebook page,
We do
so
already
we
have
could Facebook.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Public events, right?
Yes.
That's what we can do.
Right.
And then,
We know Facebook because we have a page.
Pirates.
But it's what content we can post is the other big question.
Maybe some-
Send a news.
Sorry.
Okay, can you repeat that? Okay.
the ones we know we can use, maybe
Yes.
start with those.
Yes.
All right, okay, let's just.
So we know,
Murder. Let's have one conversation.
so we know Facebook, yes. We know public events, yes. Obviously website, but do we know about rec pamphlet or senior spotlight? I would assume, yeah.
Pretty confident senior spotlight
Yeah.
would work. I don't know about the web.
I mean, we could, whether they'll let us or not, that's a different question, right?
Right.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, we could approach that. Yeah.
That's okay, I just wanted to.
Well, they paid a million.
Okay, so anything else that we know to Steve's point?
Who do I talk to about the highway sign?
Select board, right? Or DPW? Does select board approve what goes on there?
You can talk to me about it.
Yeah. I think we can probably select, the highway sign is probably a yes for. That's some, yes.
Oh,
hello, sorry.
That's a yes to how I feel about it.
I like, Steve, I like the way you're looking at this because it, you know, we need more homework done on some of those other things. In my opinion.
Yeah,
what we
this
can
first
actually make
quarter.
a recommendation.
Follow up.
I guess the question is, would the committee be okay if we attempted?
Why, yeah, why can't we create the Instagram? We created Facebook.
I don't know that there's a reason we couldn't create any of those things. The big question for me would be the town of Burlington or would it be the Burlington Government Review Committee? And then the secondary question, which is maybe more important, the first question is, what can we post on? Right?
There's no social media policy right now. I only know that because I wrote one. that is yet to get approved.
And through
Uh,
orchestrating those
wait a minute.
accounts, like there's
There is a
things.
social media.
But it's not updated in terms of like,
It was just
How-
done 2 years ago by the ISAC committee.
it was not adopted.
I thought, I was under the impression
Right.
the select board adopted it.
I submitted edits for this board to.
Well, let's get that clarified.
So just generally speaking, from my perspective, the greater number of Facebook individual pages that the government has, the more difficult it becomes. I'm not advocating, like, we should have police, public works, those main pages, hiring a communications officer, they'll start in 3 to 5 weeks. The communications landscape of the town will be very different.
But it's gonna take this next 18 months that we're working to get it to be different.
Yeah, and there are sort of general best practices about who's posting these, whether it's staff or committee members, what you're saying, where you're linking to. Those are all things that generally give me anxiety from a managing resource perspective. But, we can talk a little bit more about that, but I think, right, both things are happening at the same time, so it's a little challenging from a startup perspective. But, when we talk about, and this is just sort of best practice policy, things, towns generally don't link to external sources other than state government resources or federal government resources or, something like the Mass Municipal Association. Those are sort of the boundaries we work in, we know that those are, we know about those organizations, we know, we are political subdivisions of most of those. So I'd have to say that we can't share information. There's a lot of really unique ways to share information. There's a bunch of work that can be done. But there's a lot of caution to be applied to ensure objectivity in the community government.
Are you the person that could be a point contact that this committee could talk to and use as a sounding board for keeping things within the regs or getting, it's almost like you be the acting communications director for the purposes of this committee to at least advise us on what.
Yeah, I want to make sure that, I'm distinguishing, when I say my opinion on things, just generally what my best practices, I don't want to show any influence from the administration to the committee in any sort of way, but there are practices and sort of procedures that I'm not a fan of most rule books generally, but when you get into this area, there's things to be careful. So yeah, we can definitely work to support the facilities and efforts from a sort of pointing in the direction.
So it feels to me like where we are is that
The website is our focus, right?
Yeah, that's gonna be the North Star.
It's the website.
I think it needs to be, and the rest of it, I feel like needs more work to come back to this committee with kind of more information than what we have, and because there's some questions about the website. Is it going to be built on the website itself, or is it going to be going out to other point, right? Is that?
I would like to motion to move this meeting to that discussion of should we and or are we even allowed to have an external website where a message can be developed and whatever phrase as well. An external website that is linked from the town website versus an integration into the town website and specifically into the framework that technically exists already, which is Civic Plus.
So Patrick, can I ask you, you said there was a cost associated with for example, the BPD website and recreation website, which are Burlington.org websites, they have Burlington.org addresses, but their DNS is pointing somewhere else. Or somewhere else from 7 Plus, right? Kind of like a plug I have on. What is the cost if you can share?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know
Okay.
It's not insignificant from just my reader, but I shouldn't even say that. I don't know.
Okay, that's fair. I think that if we're talking about working within the constraints of basically no budget, right? To me, I think it makes more sense to focus on the website that we already have, the information that's already on it, and wireframing something where the side tabs take people where we want them to go, rather than spending effort trying to go outside because it feels better, it looks better, it's got a better, overall.
For
User
the record,
interface.
my concern is largely about what are the capabilities we have to communicate clearly? That's simple. If the existing Burlington.org website, for whatever reason, it's like, well, you can get one page, and that's what you got, or you can, I don't know anything about the constraints. I don't know anything about the constraints of some other system. I'm more just trying to think with an open mind around. It sounds like there, at least I've heard positive things that I did come across Civic Plus in a little bit of my research. I didn't dive into it, but it sounds like as a framework for the website, there is some tooling where we could have a little bit of, we could make some subpages, we could organize things. Questions like, can we host a video on it? Can we post any documentation, PDFs?
I think the
spreadsheets,
question is,
all those kind of
sorry,
things.
I think the question is, which we have to explore. So I think the question is, do we all agree, let's explore the free option? And then if we find the constraints are awful, then we can re-examine. I think that's the question is like, do we now just focus on what we can do with
Yeah.
what we want? Or do we want to say screw that and go new?
I'm very comfortable focusing.
Okay, everyone agree?
Okay, so let's articulate that question again.
Yeah, so the question is the charge to the external communications subcommittee to go forth with developing a content plan and wireframe within the existing BGRC website location? All those in favor? Okay. So we're gonna focus on the current website and then again, we have to determine if there's room in the next, well, we need to, so I'm gonna say in the next meeting, we are going to have, next meeting? Do we need it in 2 meetings? Do you need a month?
Great, let's do that.
Okay, so in a month, so not September 9th, but
It's my birthday, September 23rd.
it's September 20th.
Celebrate together.
So on Myrna's birthday, we will.
It's also Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Oh, so
that
maybe
could
we
be
should.
wrong.
It might be.
No,
Well,
reform zone, I can sign that.
so, okay, the second meeting in, or not the September 9th meeting, the meeting after that, we will present back the content plan. So what are we putting on it for this, which we gave you guys an idea for the baseline, but we'll actually finalize that. And then the wireframe for how that content is going to ladder to see if we, number one, can achieve what we hope, and number two, everybody agrees with how it is structured. Good? That sound good?
Russ, I would check out the town meeting, town clerk's page on the website, just to see some of the capabilities. It's not everything. The town meeting page actually has a lot of information too. You can see the left sidebar with the subtabs, you can see the right sidebar with the PDFs and the some sheets and stuff like
So
that.
the town clerk's website is the most robust of the departments.
It's the most robust, and the planning department's website is pretty thorough too, but I think town meeting is the one that I visit very often, and I know it has like attendance records in Excel format, and it has the handbook in PDF format, and it's got all of this. I mean, yeah, it's a text-based site. It really is. It's generally the one of the visual issues that most people have with the site, because you just have to be looking and looking and looking
Right.
So,
and reading.
so my intention is to, it sounds like this meeting is doing this. I intend to talk with you and find out what are the capabilities of this framework. And understanding that, be able to communicate back to the subcommittee and back to the committee at large. Here is what we can do. And that will then help us inform, okay, what does that mean or not mean based on the other things we're trying to achieve? For example, let's take a concrete example. Let's say we have a timeline that's a wonderful graphical representation of where we are in the process.
Yeah.
That's a thing I would want to live on the website. I want to be able to present to people, not as a PDF that you then open or something like that.
So it looks like you can have, this is just the town meeting website, so that's just a thumbnail, but like, so I'm just demonstrating, like, here are the different things that you can do. So there's tabs on the left-hand side that you help you navigate. That's your like your navigation menu, information here, and you can put things in there. And then over here are different documents that you can access. It is not the most visually pleasing thing. It's really, it's a functional site,
Yep.
right? It's very utilitarian.
So if you learn something is they change it.
But I think the other thing is remember is that the committee, this committee, which has a lifespan that's out, I think, 18 months, so we don't want to spend a lot of resources on something that doesn't go away. So as much as I know that we'd like to make it perfect and beautiful and all those things, sometimes it's just going to have to be good enough to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish from a communications perspective. So just to ground our feet a little bit.
So this is the current website, if anybody has, I know it's tiny and you can't really see it, but it does exist.
My concern is certainly less about being perfect and more about making sure that the information is easily consumable
Yeah.
by a public that is either uninformed or we will have to help them understand, because this is such an important thing that we're doing, could shape their town.
Just a quick question, does the current website for this committee list contact information for people?
No, it has names, but not contact information. I think that is also something though to discuss with the committee.
Okay.
Whose contact information? Like I have a burlington.org, so it's no problem for me to have my contact information there, but I don't know if people want their personal email address.
Mine's on the next town meeting.
Yeah, so,
So I know.
yeah, so I think that is not much of an issue. And
For burlington.org, you don't have a,
No, I
yours is
don't.
out there.
none of
So
us
they
have Burlington, except for you.
Yeah,
If I was developing a communication strategy for this, I would want one source of input. So one
yeah,
contact the
an
committee.
email address.
Email addresses for the committee, maybe Betsy or somebody would be in charge of reading it,
Yeah.
bringing that information to the committee.
I think
But
Do that, email.
something like that to, I don't want them talking to everybody.
Yeah. And then have it directed to me as a chair, and then I will bring it in to the committee. I think that's.
In some sense, this touches on what that committee that has not yet been named, which is the, how do you collect incoming information, incoming requests? Obviously, it's going to touch on things like a website and survey and those things, but I suppose if it's a minimum, I will certainly take it upon myself to try to get to an answer to a line of communication coming in as quickly as possible, because I feel like we're already meeting, we should already have a way that people could contact us.
So it sounds like that's part of the discussion we'll have as we go through it. In the interim, I'm already getting phone calls, so I think some people have tracked me down, so, which is great, it's fine. So I have no problem being a focal point for information. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're at 8:20. I think initially Jess and I were wondering if this would take up the full 2 hours. And it's been a lot, I think it's been a very meaty discussion tonight. So we will make sure that we get the minutes, I presented the minutes for us, so thank Patrick. And our next committee member meeting will be Collins Center. Jess and I are going to be getting together with them on phone, hopefully within the next week.
And the next topic is select.
And the next no, we're still on legislative. Yeah, we have not finished legislative, so we have to come back at a lot of open items.
And that sample language, right?
and the sample language, and they're gonna build it into take a lot of what we did and build it into the quotes beginning of a charter. And then we also need to discuss there may be some stuff that's gonna go into the charter, some of the stuff's actually gonna stay a bylaw, some of the stuff that we need to figure out, et cetera. So I think the next meeting is really going to be illuminate the process for those of us who are sitting here saying, I'm not sure where we go from here. So I have great expectations, and I hope the Collins Center doesn't disappoint. And it's September 9th. And hopefully, we'll see how this meeting worked out in terms of sound. We had some real problems with that, and it looks like hopefully people can tell who's speaking, which was a big piece of feedback we got from the last one. Catherine says he's going to work on another speaker for this room. If not, we're going to have to move because I don't think it's fair to have a meeting that nobody can hear what we say. So,
Yeah, and if the sound is fine, but identifying people is not, we could always at the beginning, we'll do roll call, raise our hands. So we go,
well, you can't see those.
yeah, you can't see those.
Oh,
So then people could be like, oh, so when you're like Corey, he's like here, people are like, oh, okay, Corey's sitting over there.
No, I said the better answer for the laptop people. What's your name? Cover your laptop.
Yeah, but they can't,
You
see
still
it.
can't see it.
But this is where I need to do.
Oh,
Yeah, that's my goal in life.
okay. All right, unless there's any other issues we did not cover?
Could I make just one comment about money?
Yeah.
We have, how many of us on this committee agreeing to come to 2 meetings a month for 18 months? If we think we need some money, we should ask. I don't think we should hesitate in the least to say, we need $10,000, whatever. We're putting in a lot of effort on our own, volunteering, and if we need something, then we should ask.
We ask, get the money, we may not use it, but that's good.
Well, I think, I totally agree with you, Bill, and I think where we can, like the volunteer thing, like if we have resources that we can do that. I agree. I think if we need something, and there may be some of the stuff that you guys have pointed out where we're gonna need some resources, I just feel like it needs to be fleshed out, maybe a little bit better about how much money and where we're gonna need it. Like the community survey, 100%, we're gonna need money for that.
But yeah, if you, I mean, you say, well, we'll get a volunteer to do this. Well, yeah, but maybe that takes a month and a half, and we really need it in 2 weeks. This is an important enough committee that we need some money, then we should just have. I mean, we're paying, I don't know what the Collins Center is, but it's some number of tens of thousands of dollars.
Said 15,000.
Why don't we,
I don't think 15,000 is a bit too far.
I think, we know it's 15 meetings.
Yeah,
It's 15 meetings.
I want to say 40,000, but that's just for,
What we need to do is, I think we need to come up with an idea of whether we want to have a general budget, like give us $10,000 and let's see what we can do. We'll come back if we need more.
We're already spending money. What is it?
Well, that is not. No. So let me, I think I'll take an action and talk to Nick and find out how he wants to handle the budget side. I think that's what that's.
We'll let them give, if they want approval before we spend significant money, that's fine. I think we need to.
Yeah.
Just make sure we're not trying to do everything on our own.
So I did, Collins said, sure that it's that amount.
So we're waiting on their estimate. That should be hopefully at the next call that we have with them, that Justin. They did it. They did it.
Said, but it's greater than just a certain.
Oh, well, I think we're gonna, Yeah, we'll figure that out and back that. All right, if there's nothing else, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
What? I can't, sorry.
So moved.
All those in favor?
I
Okay, thank you very much, everybody.